little deeper.
Something's calling me. Something's calling you. Something's calling all of us in every moment. Are we listening? Are we really, really listening? I've been doing this series on the shadow because I'm going to be teaching the shadow class. And so today is the last talk in this series, so it's been a triplet. And what I wanted to talk to you today about is the darkness and the light, because we focus so much when we're dealing with the shadow on this idea of the darkness, on the idea that it is this big, scary boogeyman that we all run and hide from. And then life happens around us, and we are triggered. There's things that are happening that are illuminating for us the aspects of ourselves that are in need of healing. This has been a rough week for the Bay Area. Really rough week. And I feel like I've been standing up here for the past 2 months saying the same thing every week. This has been a really rough week. This has been a really rough week. And as I was sitting contemplating my talk this morning, I was like, I'm beginning to feel like I'm a broken record. Anybody in here relate to that?
Amen.
So how do we break that pattern? How do we break that sense of powerlessness in the face of life? In the face of these events and experiences that are happening in the material realm? How do we enable ourselves to actually feel clear and confident and anchored in our faith? Can you hear that your faith is calling you? And in Unity, when we're talking about faith, we're not talking about wishful thinking, faith that I hope something will happen. We're talking about our capacity to be able to shape and manipulate substance. Yes. Our capacity to be a co-creator in this material realm. That is what is calling us deeper. And in order for us to show up and as clear a channel, as open a presence, as compassionate a being as we possibly can be, we have to be willing to first look within ourselves. That's the very heart of this teaching, because we know that there is only one life, one power, one presence. So whatever is operating within me is operating as the world. And if I want to change the world, where does it start? Right here. Right here. So I love this quote. I've been steeped in Carl Jung, clearly, from doing a shadow class. Through pride, we are ever deceiving ourselves. But deep down below the surface, a still small voice says to us, something is out of tune. The pride that we think we know who we are, the pride that we think we know how it all works, the pride within ourselves that we've got it all figured out, the pride in our own previous accomplishments. That pride gets in the way of our capacity to be able to listen, because it asks us, in order to truly listen to that still small voice, we have to be willing to be vulnerable. So I honestly have been blessing this week, because man, oh man, have I felt vulnerable. I have felt wide open in this process. So we bless it. And we say, how do I make this work for the greatest good? This breaking open of my heart, this breaking open of my understanding of self. I've been using this image through this cycle that I've been speaking on, with the idea being that we are the lighthouse. All of us is the lighthouse, the divinity that we are. And our little understanding of ourselves, see the little guy sitting there? Our little understanding of ourselves is just enjoying the ride. And when our spiritual practices are anchoring us so firmly, it doesn't matter how big the swells are. It doesn't matter how large the fires are. Because we are rooted and anchored in something that is deep and meaningful and powerful. And it is our work to always be willing to examine the foundations of who we are, to see where the cracks are, to see where the things that we're not willing to look at are making our understanding of ourselves unstable. So that when the swirls and the eddies of life come at us, we feel wobbly. But if we do the work, we can actually anchor ourselves very, very deeply in truth. Your vision will become clear only when you look into your heart. This work is not intellectual. This work is emotional, it's heart-based, it's body-based, it's memory-based, it is cellularly based. Who looks outside dreams. Who looks inside awakens. And we've been talking about this idea of the shadow, about how when we're looking outside of ourselves, we're actually living into an illusion. And we look outside of ourselves all the time because we're too intimidated and we're too terrified to actually look into the very heart of who we are. But it is only when we look inside that we can actually awaken. So I found this image, which I loved. Because this is what we do with ourselves. We sort of shape ourselves to project a certain understanding of who we think we are into the world. Look at me, I am this thing. Can you feel the truth of that? I am this, look at me. And it's beautiful and perfect. And the part that we're not really willing to do because we're just terrified is to actually look within. Because if we look within, what do we think we might find? Disparate little pieces of rusted metal. Something that does not feel as if it is the very truth of the identity that we have decided we want to present to the world. And so we protect ourselves. We protect ourselves always. Remember, I've said this before. The ego is only interested in maintaining the status quo. That's its job. It wants to keep everything exactly where it is. It doesn't want change and transformation. It wants you to be familiar and comfortable. But that's not what's happening within us on the deepest level. Something's calling you. So Debbie Ford, in her book, talks about this thing, which she calls the beach ball effect. So all those parts of ourselves, all those little twisted pieces of metal, all those things that we don't want anybody to see about who we are, the parts of ourselves that we don't want to own is what our shadow is. The fact that we're a liar, the fact that we're greedy, the fact that we're selfish, the fact that we're angry, the fact that the list goes on and on, yes? And she talks about how each one of those things, because we don't want to be that thing, it's as if we try to submerge them down underneath the water of our being. But what does a beach ball want to do? It wants to bounce back up again. It wants to be revealed. So the more beach balls we have, can you feel it already sitting in a pool, and you're trying to keep all the beach balls down, and you're trying to keep them really submerged, and you kind of got the perfect poise and the pose figured out, where all the beach balls will stay under the water. Hi, look at me. You can't see any of my stuff. And all it takes is a little swell in the water, a little movement, a little something coming at you. And all of a sudden, whoop, there goes one, and there goes another, and there goes another, and all of a sudden you are in reactive mode, falling apart, feeling like you're in the midst of crisis. Can anyone relate to that feeling? And it cascades. It kind of just, because it's exhausting to try to keep all those aspects of ourselves hidden and beneath the surface. It's just exhausting. But we're so terrified that we're going to see something that we don't want to see. We're so terrified that it's going to be the monster and that everyone else is going to see the monster that we really are. So, because we're not looking inward, We put it out there into the world all around us. And that is really the only way we can see our shadow. Because it's tricky, it's sneaky. Like I said, our ego doesn't want to admit we have it. The shadow is the part of yourself you don't know you are. It's the part of yourself you don't even want to admit you are. So guess what? It's just living there sort of like in this blindered place within your being. So how do we see it? We see it through projection. We project out onto the world all the things that we don't want to be. All the things, so all the lying and the polarization and the frustration and the anger and all of that, we see it all around us because we're not willing to actually own it as our own. So a big piece of shadow work is what we call reclaiming our projections. Reclaiming those parts of ourselves that we've put out over there, and we actually bring them home and we say, I am that. I am a liar. I am a cheat. I am greedy. Because we contain multitudes, folks. There is nothing that you are not. We are the cosmos in its entirety. There is nothing out there that you are experiencing in the outside world that does not exist within you. And the only way to get those things to stop showing up all around you is for you to stop projecting them outside of you. Can you feel that? And that's the beauty of it. So all those people that annoy you, all those people that irritate you, you know who they are, right? There's that one person, like, oh, they don't even have to open their mouth, and you're like, has nothing to do with them. Really. It's your stuff. It's your stuff. And isn't that empowering? Because that means that you can actually shift something and transform it and have a completely different experience. So we've been talking a lot over the past couple weeks about how you see projection. And these are the triggers, right? If you find yourself criticizing, guess what? You find yourself judging, blaming, you find yourself getting really angry, you're annoyed all the time, that low-level annoyance. Shadow. If you're uber sensitive to something, shadow. If you are reactive, that's those beach balls bouncing up, right? The reactivity. The beach ball kind of goes poof, right in your face. And if you find, this is the one that's really important for us in our teaching because we're awake to a degree when we're in this teaching. So what we do is we justify all the other behaviors. Oh no, it's okay to criticize that person because what they did was so far outside the norm. No, it's okay for me to judge them because, you know, they're really wrong, they're bad. We justify the fact that we're exhibiting all of that behavior. I know I got reactive, but they asked for it. We justify. The minute you see yourself doing that, that's all shadow work. Isn't that awesome? We have opportunity after opportunity after opportunity after opportunity throughout our day to continue to heal and own and reclaim all those parts of ourselves. So there's the shadow is the disowned aspects of yourself, the parts of yourself that you just don't want to have anything to do with. Some of it you decided when you were very little, some of it you decided yesterday. But it's the parts of yourselves that you are not going to be, that you are not. And up until now, we've been speaking about this in the terms of it being things like lying and cheating and being selfish and all of that. And yes, the shadow definitely has that piece of what we would quote unquote call negative. The negative things about who we are. But there's also another piece that comes into place. So if you can spot it, that means you've got it. So whatever you're seeing out there in the world, if you can spot it, wow, they're so selfish. Guess what? You got it. You wouldn't be able to name it and categorize it and be able to actually identify it unless it was something that actually lived within you. So if you can spot it, you got it. So now I want to talk about the golden shadow. So this is the aspect of ourselves that perhaps we wouldn't want on a conscious level to have pushed away from ourselves. It's the things about ourselves that perhaps would be what we would call positive. It's the aspects of ourselves that we still are not owning. That's the piece. But we've pushed them out onto someone else. And that can show up as admiration and hero worship. That can show up as adoring something or someone for what they stand for. It can show up as deeply inspired as you watch someone else do something. So the golden shadow are those things about ourselves that are really kind of awesome, but that we're not willing to say are actually ours. Oh, she is so beautiful. I will never be that beautiful. Oh, they are so wise. That's not me. Oh, the compassion that they have. I'm not that. I could never be that compassionate. I could never be that creative. I could never be that artistic. I could never be that patient. I could never be that centered. I could never be that successful. I could never be that abundant. They have something that I don't have. And we do it all the time. We give up those parts of ourselves that are those things. And we watch it as we project into the world. And we see all these successful business people. We see all these young, stylish, thin people walking around. We see people who are warm and friendly and outgoing. We see people who are disciplined and on track. We see people who are focused and driven. And we think that somehow they're special, that somehow they have something that we don't have. Well, let me be really clear. If you can spot it, you got it. The golden shadow is all of those gifts that you somehow have disowned from your own understanding of who you are. They are the parts of yourself that you have given away to other people, thinking that they're not applicable or able to be activated in your own life. They're a visionary. They have whatever. I know that I'm not really that. So shadow work is not just about owning those parts of ourselves that make us really squeamish in that sort of fear-based way, like our anger and our lying and our cheating and our racism and all of that. But it's also about those parts of ourselves that are really wonderful and empowering, and yet we have given it all away because we have decided that I am not that. I'm just not that. Walt Whitman, we contain multitudes. Whatever it is that you are seeing out there in the projection, that's the gift of the projection, is you get to see it. You can actually see your shadow. There's an opportunity for you to reclaim it and to call it home. So Marianne Williamson, and I really do agree with this because I think this is the hardest part about the shadow work, is not the darkness. People are actually kind of okay with, because on some level we really don't think we're worthy. On some level we really do think that we're awful. So if I can actually prove to myself that I'm a liar and a cheat and we're kind of willing on some level to go there. The part that we really resist, it's not that we're inadequate, but it's that we're powerful beyond measure. It is our light, not our darkness, that most frightens us. And I can't tell you how many clients I work with, and we're doing spiritual counseling, and we're working through stuff, and they get to a point where they look at me and they go, oh, this is terrifying. And I say, what's terrifying? And they say, I'm actually powerful. Terrifying. that you no longer can blame outside sources, that you no longer are a victim, that you truly are the architect of your experience, which is the foundation of what we believe in unity, that you are the architect of your experience. Oh, that's your light. And yet we resist it. We pull away from it. We hide ourselves under a bushel. My invitation is to dive in fully, powerfully, face those parts of yourself, because you know what? This is what's waiting for you. This is what your shadow actually has the capacity to be. Something that is light and has darkness, and yet all of it is working together. This is the piece that we believe in this teaching, is that all of this is happening in the cocoon of the wholeness that you are. It's all happening in the light and the love that you are. It's all happening in that field of grace that you are. And it is from that space that you're able to meet all of the seeming disparate parts of yourself and call them home. Really call them home. So that when things like wildfires come raging through your life, whether that's literal or whether that's metaphysical, that you are anchored in something, that you have something you can access that will source you and nourish you, so that you literally are the lighthouse. You are the light itself. There's no light outside of you shining on you. You are the light itself. Are you willing to own it? Are you willing to embrace it? Are you willing to step straight through the heart of all that icky, twisted metal that you think is creating a perfect image of who you think you should be, and actually show up as your most authentic, radiant, light-filled self? The shadow is the block which separates us most effectively from the divine voice. It is the thing that stops us. It is the thing that prevents us from being able to hear, really hear, what is calling you. Because something is calling you. Because we are never done, folks. We are on this beautiful journey of expansion. We are living as the infinite expression of the divine. There is always more to reveal, never less. Are you engaging with that? Powerfully, authentically. Because that is how we change this world. That is how we make this a world that truly works for everyone. By being willing to do the work within us so that we are a place for every part of ourselves, the everyone that we are. If we can't welcome everyone into ourselves, how can we possibly welcome everyone into the material expression of the world? So I'm going to close with a Rumi poem, which is just perfect and beautiful, and it's called The Guest House. This being human is a guest house. Every morning a new arrival, a joy, a depression, a meanness. Some momentary awareness comes as an unexpected visitor. Welcome and entertain them all, even if they are a crowd of sorrows who violently sweep your house empty of its furniture. Still, treat each guest honorably. It may be clearing you out for some new delight. The dark thought, the shame, the malice, meet them at the door laughing and invite them in. Be grateful for whatever comes, because each has been sent as a guide from beyond. So let's take this into our time of meditation.